You've tamed the voices in your head. You've put your courage to the test. Laid all your doubts to rest.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Intuitive Queens podcast. Today I have a very, very special guest, very dear to my heart. She is the woman that has created the school I went to become a coach, and I'm really excited to have here with me Julie Parker. Hello, Julie. Welcome.
Hi, Mara. Oh, thank you so much for having me on your beautiful podcast and show. I'm so delighted to be here.
Thank you for being here. You are so many things because you are a coach, you have created two schools, you have a podcast, you have just created an amazing book. And there's so much of you to say, to talk about to the audience. But I want you to tell us your story and tell us how everything started. What made you want to go into coaching and everything that followed, because you are working with women, you're doing amazing things, and you are creating such a beautiful community. And I'm just really interested in knowing how did that happen.
Well, I think in many ways, Mara, no one is more surprised than I am about where my life and business is right now. And I didn't necessarily ever dream that this would be possible for me or what my life would look like, but it is. And I'm very grateful for that. So my professional career began in the field of social work. That's what I trained at university to become. And I worked for many years as a youth and family counsellor in the community health sector. And I absolutely loved that work. It was really, really wonderful. And I particularly did a lot of work with girls and women who continue to be a passion for me today. And I had a beautiful friend who was a colleague of mine when I was at the health service. And she came in to work one morning. It was a Monday morning. I'll never forget it, actually, because it was a conversation that really changed the trajectory and course of my life. And she said, she showed me an advertisement from the newspaper. And so that just tells you how long ago this might have been when people were still advertising such things in printed newspapers.
Yeah.
So it's a while ago now, Mara, that's for sure, coming up to, 20 years or so.
Wow.
And she said, I saw this in the paper on the weekend, and it is an information evening about this new thing called life coaching. And she said, when I read it and what it was all about, she said, you were the first person that I thought of. And she said, I think you would be fantastic at this. And she said, let's go. She said, I'm sort of interested in it too. And I was like, oh, I don't know, whatever. And she said, look, there's wine and cheese. And I'm like, okay.
Of course.
I said, all right. I said, 3 wine and cheese. Why not? So let's go along. So off we went. And that night again, really did change the course of my life, because as soon as I heard someone talk about what life coaching was and what an extraordinary way of working it could be with people, and how to help them set goals and become the very best and most amazing version of themselves, and how it was very empowering and was not about telling people what to do, but really helping people find their own inner strength and calling, I was in. And interestingly, my friend, she said, no, it's not for me. But she said, I can absolutely see that it is for you. And so I trained to become a coach. And this was a very, very long time before the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, Mara, which is, of course, where you trained with us. The training itself, I will admit, I didn't love. It was very corporate. It was very masculine. I was the only woman in the class. Wow. And I was the youngest by a long shot. And that's because coaching as an industry has its beginnings in the corporate world. And it's very tied in with teams and performance management, HR, staff appraisals, and those sorts of things. But intuitively, and I know that this is such a passion of yours and such a deep theme, of course, of this podcast, I kept getting these strong messages within myself to keep going, to not worry that I was very different to everybody else, and to keep thinking that and knowing and believing that there was something in this for me, and that this could be a way of working with girls and women that was calling me at a deeper level beyond the counselling that I was doing. So I stuck at it, and that is what happened. And the very, very condensed version is that I slowly started my coaching business, seeing women in the area of self-confidence, self-love, self-care, body image, and which were all passions of mine. And I really expanded into that, and slowly one client became 3, became 10, became more, and I was able to slowly drop down my other work until my coaching business went full time. And that became very successful. Now, mind you, this is over a number of years, Mara. This did not happen overnight, and I think that that's very important to share.
Yeah.
And eventually what happened with that business, my little coaching business, is that it became not so little. And I started to attract a lot of coaches towards me that said, Julie, you have this massive waiting list. What are you doing with people? How are you working with them? You're getting such amazing results. You're being invited to speak places. You're doing so well. Can you please help and coach and guide me in how you're getting that with your clients? And so I started to do a lot of business coaching with coaches and found that I loved them. I absolutely fell in love with them. And it was a whole new arm of coaching for me. And then the next step with that came many years later, that it got to the point where I could no longer deal with the capacity of seeing people one-on-one. I had a 6-month waiting list that had completely blown out.
Wow.
And I knew that that was then the time to start thinking about whether I might actually be able to start a training course and academy myself. And then a whole nother chapter begins. But that's the first chapter.
Okay. Wow. I love the first chapter. And I can only imagine 25 years ago what it meant for a woman to go into such a new, completely new experience. Because being together, being with men when you were training, and then going to set everything off for yourself in a time when women weren't really doing that much. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess that was the kind of environment at the time. So I'm curious to know, how did you feel? What was going on with you when you were training with all those men that came from corporate, and you were the only girl? So I can only imagine the discomfort you could have possibly felt at that point, and the transition from your job to actually becoming a successful coach. What was going on with you?
Well, a lot. I can certainly let you know that there was a lot, and at times it was very challenging, because and I think many women have probably had an experience like this at some point in time in their life. Hopefully our experiences of such things are becoming less and less, but they certainly do exist. Is that while there was never anything really horrible that took place in that class, and that training experience, which went on for a number of months and involved full day weekend learning and things like that, really the feeling that I had throughout the entire thing was that the rest of the male trainees saw me as a little bit of a pet, that I was a little bit of a joke. And it was like, oh, yes, little Jules, she's here for a bit of personal development.
Right.
And because they would turn up in their suits, and they were HR managers of big banks. And there was another guy there that was in charge of an entire media department at the most popular radio station in the country. And they were all having intensive chats about how this was an amazing thing to learn how to do so they could get more productivity out of their staff. And they had all had the course paid for by their workplaces. Whereas I'd had to run my credit card hot.
Yeah.
Because the one person at the information evening that I had been interested in that spoke on the night, she was just one person of many, all of whom others were men, was the one woman in the room who said that she'd established her own practice. And I was like, okay, that's what I want. That's what I'm imagining for myself here. More flexibility to set my own hours, seeing people who want to come to me, not necessarily people who are told that they must come and see me, and a whole variety of other things. And so there was just a level of discomfort around that, Mara, that was definitely there. But at the same time, my heart and my intuition was pretty true and pretty strong. And it kept saying to me, it's okay. Leave them. They're doing it for their reasons. It doesn't have to be for your reasons. And let's face it, Julie, you're never going to see them again.
Like, I love that.
They're not your people. You're not here to make friends. You're here to learn a skill that is going to help you create something for yourself. And so it's okay. Keep going. You know, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be or feel or look fabulous all the time for you to get something out of this.
Okay, so that's amazing. That's such a beautiful conversation that you had with your intuition, because I cannot imagine, you know, when you go do something new, how fear can try to stop you and how your ego can try to stop you. But that's such a beautiful confirmation that if you listen and you continue, then a lot of beautiful doors open. So now, as you said, you became successful, you started coaching coaches. And how did you transition from being a coach to become the CEO of a school? What was the process for you there?
Well, I am here to tell you, Mara, that the process of going from being a coach to a coach trainer and starting a coaching school was 10 times the challenge and stretch that it was from going from being a social worker to a coach.
Yeah, can imagine.
It was a really, really big deal. And I had to sort through a lot of things in my own mind and heart when I first started having these ideas around, could I actually start a training school for life coaches? And in the beginning, I want to share with you that that was not the way that it was formulating in my brain. It came to me in a much safer way. And we all know that our ego sometimes does that. It sends us smaller versions of things to help us keep safe. And initially, when it first came to me, it was like, okay, let's run a group coaching program for coaches, because you can't take the clients one-on-one anymore. You're at capacity. You can't do this any further. And so let's get them together in a group. And so initially I thought, that's okay. I can do that. That would be completely fine. But then I hit a roadblock with it and just couldn't seem to creatively move any further. And so I did what all good coaches should do when they start to run up against a brick wall like that. I sought out the services of a really good coach. And I found an amazing business and creativity coach that I had been aware of before. I'd never worked with her, but I had always admired her. And she'd been around in the coaching industry for a long time, like I had. And so I felt like I could really trust her wisdom. And I went to see her and I told her what was happening in my business, and she was incredible. And she was very, very straight with me right from the start. And she said, oh, surely you must be starting to think about starting a life coaching school.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh. And she said, come on. She said, be honest. She said, it must have crossed your mind at least. And I said, well, yes, it has crossed my mind. I said, but there are no female-led coaching schools in the world. I don't come from a corporate background. I said, I've developed a model and a way of working with people that's my own, but it's uncertified, it's untested. And she said, how did you think everybody else started? She said, everybody starts with something that's untested, uncertified, unknown. And suddenly she started stripping back all my excuses, as good coaches do.
Yeah.
And she gave me the most wonderful suggestion of homework after that very first session that we had together. And that was to just simply go home and play, literally play like a child, creatively, with the idea of starting a life coaching school. She said, don't tell yourself you're going to do it. Don't say it's going to happen. She said, just play with it. She said, what might you call it? How would it look? What would you teach? What would be the sort of people that you would like to call into it, and more? She said, and see what happens. And it was the most incredible suggestion, because I went home after that session, and I'm so grateful that it was on a Friday afternoon, because for the next 48 hours over that weekend, I don't think I barely slept. And by Monday morning, when I nicked into her inbox again, the Beautiful You Life Coaching course and the Beautiful You Coaching Academy had been born, and I had the outline of our training.
Ooh.
And since that time, that training has actually really only changed a small amount. What poured out of me in that first 48 hours pretty much became the roadmap for where we are today. And that's how it started. We began with one pilot course and then expanded from there. And by the end of this year, we'll have trained more than 1,500 coaches from around the world, including, of course, your magnificent self.
I have.
And so, yay!
The story is
That's
so
the
amazing.
story.
Oh my God, it's so amazing. Like, I really do. I cannot imagine. You open up your heart when you started doing that. And sometimes our fear keeps us small, but luckily we have other people that can see through us. Okay, so now you have this school, but this is not the only thing that you do, because you also have the Priestess podcast and the Priestess school, and now you have a book. First of all, because now you've been coaching, like the Beautiful You Coaching Academy has been going on for 6 years, right?
That's right. Yeah, we're 6
So,
years old this year.
6 years old. So you've seen a lot of different women, and you have met other coaches that are always with you, coaching other coaches. How did got together? How did that happen? And what was happening for you? Like, did you start to be like, okay, now I can do more, or how things change for you in mentally, energetically?
That is a really wonderful question, Mara. And do you know, when I first started and I took that first pilot group, I did not have any expectations that it was going to be something that I did any more than once per year. And that it would be a relatively small group of coaches, and that it was designed primarily from a personal perspective for me to stem my waiting list and help me get my business under control.
Right.
That was really what I thought it was going to do. And I believed that I would continue working with people one-on-one and coaching one-on-one. I did not expect what happened to happen, which is that the course became so popular that I realised by the second one, I could no longer have a one-on-one coaching practice at all. that there were so many people that wanted to do the course that I needed to think about how I could put it on more often. And I started to put it on 3 times a year. It goes for 6 months. And that's now how many courses we put on every year. And while initially I felt very strange about letting go of my one-on-one practice, I came to understand and passionately realize that my clients were all of these beautiful life coaching trainees, and that I was simply coaching and training and working with them in a different way. And it was a way that I came to love really, really deeply. And so while initially it felt, discombobulating, so to speak, and uncertain, it eventually reached a point where it felt really lush and fluid and easeful and graceful, which is what I had been looking more for in my own business, and I still have now, which is great. I should also mention, because I think that this is very important for people to know, I do not do this alone. While I started out in the very first pilot course, it was still just me and a part-time virtual assistant. I now have a beautiful team of employees and trainers and contractors that make up the beautiful You Coaching Academy. I do not do this by myself. And there is no way that I could do it by myself. They are a massive part of my success. And I'm so grateful to them for that.
Yay. And for me, I just want to mention this because I remember when I was looking for a coaching school, I had the same problem. All the coaching academy that I was coming across were very corporate. And then I found you, which is very feminine. It's very gentle. It's very for women. And it really makes you feel like, even if it's online, makes you feel like you're there and you're taking us hand to hand, and you're helping us to understand a lot of critical things to become a coach. And you never feel like, because it's online, you're not listened, you're not heard, or you're not understood. You can always ask questions, and there is like an amazing support group. And I'm not saying it because I did it. I'm saying it because it really felt different compared to other courses that I kept trying to figure out if they were the right one for me. And I felt there was this, the soul was missing. The heart was missing. It was very salesy, very corporate, very like, you must do this. And instead, like, I love that you brought together such a beautiful, heartful community of coaches and people, and the way the course is, it just makes you feel like, okay, I can do it. I can, I'm supported. I have a group of women that are going through what I'm going through, so it's okay. I just wanted to say this because I think it's very important when you are looking to find a coaching course that resonates with you.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Mara, because everything that you've mentioned there was something that was deeply important to me in starting this school. And in fact, one of the things that I had deep concerns about when I began it was that how much I was going to miss face-to-face contact, because I saw so many of my clients in person. And so I worked very, very hard to make sure that people's online experience with us was one that was truly, as much as humanly possible, very boutique, very high touch, very intimate, as much as it possibly can be. And I actually think that coaches in the coaching industry do that quite well now. You know, we're all living in a time in the world right now where being able to work at home, being able to work online, being able to work with distance from people is showing itself to be more and more important to us, and in fact life-saving in many instances. And so I'm very grateful to the coaching industry for being one of the very first industries industries in the world to really, really lead the way with that. Because the work that coaches do is so powerful, and there's no reason why it being done online means that it's any less powerful than something done in person.
Agree completely. Okay, now let's move on to all the other things that you're doing. So you have a podcast which is called the Priestess Podcast.
Yes.
And you also have a school. What is this? Tell us, like, what's the meaning of priestess? Because I think a lot of people think about it in the old way. You've just written a book about the modern priestess, and I really want to talk about this topic. What does it mean for you, and how did you come about this? What is the modern priestess?
Well, that is a very rich and big and wonderful question. And people might be thinking to themselves, okay, we've just switched into another universe. We've gone from life coaching to the world of women's spirituality and priestessing. But the thing is that sometimes comes as a surprise to many people is that the two are very, for me personally, intimately connected. I appreciate that they are not necessarily that way for everybody that might either train with us to become a life coach, or who may come in contact with me through my priestess work, the Priestess podcast, and the Priestess book, which is coming out soon. But essentially, Mara, what a priestess is a sacred leader. It's a female sacred leader. You are a priestess. You are a modern priestess in this world. You are somebody that makes space and love and heart and openness for other women to be able to see their divinity, magic, and beauty. Your portal to that happens to be through the power of our intuitive relationship with self. Mine is through a skill such as coaching, which really is another way, a modern way of a woman once upon a time in the ancient world who might have been called a medicine woman or a witch or a healer or a guide of some kind. It's somebody that holds space for someone else to help them, guide them, support them, help them to get in touch with their own divinity. Because we're all spiritual beings. It's just a matter of how much we are open to seeing that and working with it. That means it's something that is either very important to us or it might not be. And either way doesn't mean that any of those people are better than the other. It is just what it is. And so my own spiritual awakening, interestingly enough, and not a coincidence, really began to pick up steam about 6 years ago, about 6 to 7 years ago, when the Beautiful You Coaching Academy was born. And because I had to work through a lot of fear and resistance and ego to step into my own light and gifts and start that school, it brought up a lot of stuff for me at the time. And I don't mind sharing with you that I actually went through a period of time where I felt quite depressed and anxious and needed to seek some therapeutic support for that. And it was through that experience that I worked with somebody that helped open me up in deeper ways to things such as presence, stillness, meditation, breath work, and connecting in with my own deeper intuitive voice and higher power. And so simultaneously, as I was creating this academy, I was also doing an enormous amount of deep, deep work on myself. And I know, therefore, that there is a lot of me that personally exists in that course. Other people might not necessarily see that if they don't know me, and they're not meant to, but I know it and I see it. But of course, as you were talking about before, it is not so deeply that way that someone can't make it their own, because that's very important. And the result of this for me, Mara, is that over the years is that I've embraced my spirituality and my sacred leadership more and more and more. And I then wanted to have rich connections and community with women to dive into that further. And the Priestess podcast was born out of my desire to talk to other priestesses, to talk about their relationship with their intuition, the goddess, the divine feminine, how they were using things such as tarot or oracle cards or working with herbs or crystals. And a girlfriend of mine said, really, it was her idea to start the podcast. She said, well, if you actually start to have these conversations with people, can you please try not to be a selfish bitch and just have them on your own with them? Could you please record them? And can we all hear them? You know, she said, please. And I'm like, oh, I'd never even contemplated such a thing. And she said, yes, could you? And that's when the Priestess podcast was born. And from there, then Priestess Temple School as well, with my beautiful fellow sister, Sora Sue, you know.
I love what you said, and I like that in two very pivotal situations of your life, two different people told you, why don't you do this? Because you will be good at this, or I want to hear more of this. And I think it's what happens to all of us, because we never really think we have something to say or a power or how our message should be shared. It just always like for us, for our sake, and to talk to our friends. And then someone else comes in and like, no, you should be doing this. You should be. And I love this happening two occasions for two really, really important things of your life that really change how everything went and how the coaching school started. And then from there you started the Priestess School and the book. I kind of want to understand, so you talked about starting to work on yourself and your shadows when you started the school. Is that when you started to learn about all the spiritual techniques and tools, or were you interested in that before, but you weren't talking about it because maybe it wasn't so common like now that a lot of people are into those things, and we are all, like, a lot of women are rising up to this, to our spirituality and to what we are?
Yeah, look, I had always been interested in these things. I did not necessarily think that anybody else was, and I didn't, which of course was wrong. It's just that none of us were really talking about them. And I also didn't necessarily, I think, Mara, because I was still working through a lot of things myself for many years, even before 6 or 7 years ago, I didn't really feel as though I had anything to say about them. You know, they were very much something that was more personal for me, and I was just working through. But then it reached a point where they were impacting me with such richness and beauty and depth that I couldn't help but want to start sharing and talking about them more. And I think the really pivotal moment of that for me was when I began to talk more about how I worked with the goddess and the divine feminine, and how I was so inspired by the world of the ancient priestess, and the fact that I could see modern reflections in so many, in particular, entrepreneurial women that I was coming into contact with. So many women who were coaches, healers, guides, crystal therapists, essential oils advocates, herbalists, kinesiologists, shamanic practitioners. And I was like, there's a modern priestess movement here. And it is extraordinary and it is powerful. And I'm not certain that people know that this is what they are. And so that sent me down a path of deep research and exploration and adventure and joy. And I think it's going to last a lifetime for me.
Yay! I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Priestess School and your book. Who is it for, and why why would you want to learn something about the priestess, and what can we find in your book? It's like, I feel it's like, if you want to awaken your senses, if you want to awaken your divine feminine, this is where you need to go. But this is my station, because I know you and I know what you do.
I need to hire you as my publicist, Mara. That sounds spot on to me. Why would someone want to buy Priestess, ancient spiritual wisdom for modern sacred leaders? It's for any woman that is interested in exploring her spirituality. It is for a woman who feels deeply called to the world of service, her own femininity, the divine nature within us all. It is for any woman that is fascinated and deeply touched by how we can learn from the history of women who came before us, particularly pre-patriarchy, before we were told what to look like, before we'd been bound by perfectionism, before the sisterhood was broken. That was the time and the glory days, so to speak, of the ancient priestess, when women were in fact incredibly powerful. Political leaders, spiritual leaders, oracles, seers, guides to the most important people in the world. And they were themselves some of the most important and revolutionary people in the world. It's a world that is so rich and so beautiful, and it has direct impact on us today. But until these stories are known and shared, no one might necessarily know. The book is also a call to action for women. It's a call to action for them to understand that as soon as you are aware of your own divine light and magnificence, that you have a duty, a bound duty to share that and create your legacy in this world, whatever that may mean for you and be for you. That there is a sacred leader that lives inside all of us, and that my belief is that it is women that are going to heal and deeply change the world.
Yes.
From everything to do with the environment to poverty, to everything else. And this might sound and be controversial for some people, and some people might not necessarily agree with it, and I understand that, but I stand by it. The fact of the matter is that the world has been ruled by white men now for a very, very long time, and I'm not seeing them do a bang-up job. We're in trouble in lots and lots of different ways, and it's time for a new way forward. And I truly do believe that it's women that's going to lead that way.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think we are rising up, and you can see that there are always more and more women creating their own way of sharing messages and helping other people. And so you, me, and all the coaches sharing our message, I think we are all kind of pushing other women. Come on, ladies, let's rise up together. I love this. I love this so much, Julie. I could talk about this topic forever. But unfortunately, we need to wrap up. But before we go, first of all, I'd like for you to tell us, I know your book is coming up soon, so tell us when we can start to order your book, where we can find it, and I'll put all the links on the show notes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mara, for extending that invitation to me. So Priestess is due for pre-orders on the 1st of June. And it will be released and flying her wings around the world on July 1st. So there's a month to be able to pre-order. And if you do pre-order, you get a beautiful free ebook that contains 9 priestess rituals, as well as an amazing video summit with 9 incredible priestesses from around the world sharing their skills and gifts and talents, bringing those to life. So, just simply for pre-ordering in the month of June, you get those and they'll wing their way to you for free. And I'm so excited about the book. I can't wait. It feels like it's a significant part of my life's work, and I'm so excited for everybody to receive it.
Yes, we cannot wait to be able to have in our hands. Well, at least I cannot wait. And the book cover is also my favorite color, so of course I have to have that book. One last thing, like, you have such an incredible experience and you have created so much, and you have started in a time where women weren't doing this. What would be one of your advice to the women that feel called to do something different and more service, but they have that voice like you had, oh, but I don't have a corporate background, or I shouldn't, like we all have it. What would you say to them?
Well, that voice, another word for it really is fear. And the one thing that I'd love to share with everyone is that what I have now learned over my many years in this industry and just simply living is that when that voice comes to you, when fear visits, it's actually a really amazing thing, because it's a sign that you are leaning into, dreaming about, and thinking about something for yourself that is stretching, challenging, extraordinary, and going to take you out of your comfort zone, which more than likely means it is 100% the right thing to do. Fear doesn't come to us. That voice doesn't come to us when we are comfortable and unchallenged. It only comes to us at those times. And so if you hear that voice, the biggest suggestion that I have for you is actually to celebrate yourself and congratulate yourself and do everything that you can to push through it and work through it, because it's only coming to you as a wee test. That's it. That's all. The reason that it's there is actually confirmation you are on the right path and headed in the right direction. So keep going.
I love it. I love celebrate yourself because you have fear. I love that. I never heard that before. So I'm going to remind myself of this. I absolutely love it.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much. I've had chills the whole conversation we had. No, seriously, because you created things that are so important, and I really hope women listening to you and what you've done and going to see all of the things you have created, which I will put all the academies links below for everybody that wants to either look at the Coaching Academy or the Priestess Academy or the podcast, anything. Because I feel like we need to at least be curious about it and then see if that resonates with us. If you feel called to do any work in this kind of sense, I mean, Julie has created everything from in a time where women weren't doing this, and in a moment now where we need this even more. So I just have chills because if I'm here right now talking to you and having a podcast, is because you have created that school. So I'm just extremely grateful for you. So yes, thank you so much, Julie.
You're so welcome, Mara. And gosh, may I just take a moment to say, just indulgently, how much I adore you and how proud I am of you and everything that you are doing and everything that you have achieved. It's beautiful, and thank you for bringing all of your gifts to the world and having
your mind is clearer than before. Your heart is full and wanting more. Your future's at the door.